Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. I am having an exceptional day. In our last episode we defeated the Ender Dragon, came out to the outer End Islands for the first time, and now, a stone's throw from the gateway that brought us here, we are looking at an End City of fairly diminutive size, but with one of the most important things an End City can have, one of these ships sailing out into the void. Now the Endermen have been trying to distract me. They've been trying to walk in front of me and dare me to have a staring contest with them, but we are going to approach this End City from ground level, which is where you'll be approaching most of them. We could pillar up to this ship already, but I think we're probably going to do this the quote-unquote legit way to prime you for other situations in which you might find a ship that is slightly less accessible. They can generate over patches of the void, sometimes they can generate in some really weird places, and it's usually a good idea to know how to take on one of these cities head on. So outside of the entrance to this, you should find some unusual looking mobs. These are Shulkers, which appear as blocks. They appear as these little kind of cases, and they will open up and fire these pellets at you that cause you to levitate. It is usually a good idea to have a water bucket on you when something like this happens, because then you can place it underneath you to prevent a little extra fall damage, or alternatively, get yourself underneath the overhang of this End City. Once you've broken line of sight with the Shulkers, they should no longer fire any pellets at you, so you should be able to hop on down, and we can take out this Shulker. Now, you'll deal a lot more damage to them when they are open, so it's usually a good idea to wait for them to open up. And when killed, they will drop Shulker shells. It's usually a good idea to have looting on your sword, because they won't drop them 100% of the time, but the chance is obviously going to be increased with looting. And Shulker shells are a really important thing to have. They are one of the reasons I'm raiding this city at the ground level to begin with, because if we convert some of the wood that we brought with us into a chest, and combine that with 2 Shulker shells in a crafting interface, we end up crafting a Shulker box, which looks like the shell of the Shulker mob itself, but can be used as a chest. We can stash a bunch of stuff in here, and the most important part of this is that when we break the Shulker box, its contents remain inside and can travel with us, meaning that we can organize our inventory space a lot more effectively. You can even shove a bunch of these into an ender chest. The only rule for using them is that you cannot put a Shulker box inside another Shulker box. But right now, if I wanted to, I could clear up a bunch more inventory space in my ender chest by simply taking a bunch of these items that I don't use all that much and cramming them into one of these Shulker boxes. We'll do a lot more organization with these later, but for now, we can use our inventory space a lot more effectively. Once we've killed a couple more Shulkers and obtained the shells for them, I might even create a dedicated tools chest for all of these extra diamond and netherite tools that I have here in my ender chest. For now though, I'm going to make sure I'm using silk touch, so I pick up the ender chest and we're going to proceed up this tower. While we're here, let's comment on the architecture a little bit. These are Purpur blocks, and I actually don't want to break out the roof of this building, but we can obtain some from around the edge of the room right here. These blocks are kind of pastel purple blocks that can be crafted by the player if you want to invest some chorus fruit into that. Once again, you can pop the chorus fruit that we get from chorus plants that are growing outside, and smelting those in a furnace will turn them into effectively building material that is used to make this family of blocks. As you can see, those are crafted into the stairs and slabs that make up the overhangs of these cities and the structure of the boats out there. There are also these Purpur pillar blocks, which are kind of a unique texture. It's kind of nice to have a few of those. We'll stash those in the Shulker box a little later as well. But as we come up here, you'll notice there's a tower to climb with a bit of a parkour challenge inside of here. If you want to use it that way, you can kind of hop between these slabs, which I'm doing a terrible job of to start off with because there's a little bit of headroom that you need to consider here. But if you don't want to do the parkour challenge, you can simply bring some materials with you and place a full block or a slab on each one of these corners. There is a Shulker attacking us from above, and up here we end up hitting a bit of a ledge, so we should be able to circle around and attack that Shulker, and then immediately pick up the Shulker shell that it has dropped. And we get to the top of the tower here, and we are faced with simply an opening. There isn't really anything that branches off of this specific tower, and in some larger end cities, we should find that there are multiple branching structures that we can explore. But right now, the only thing we need to explore is back down here, where this opening leads out towards this boat. Now, if you're feeling confident and you have a handful of ender pearls on you, which I should have still in this Shulker box here, there we go, we can always use an ender pearl to traverse out to the boat. We could throw it fairly high so it hopefully lands against the mast, let's say about there, and let's see if that hits. And it does! We have landed on the deck of the boat. Obviously, that's a little bit dangerous. If the ender pearl collides with the side of a block down there, you could end up falling into the void if you're not careful. So that may be an approach that some players will not want to take. But in this case, instead of bridging out slowly using blocks and getting attacked by the shulkers that are attached to the back of the boat, I figured it was going to be a good idea to ender pearl over here directly, avoid those, and be able to make our way down into the ship. Now, there is one shulker against the back of the boat here, so we're going to take this one out as well. It's kind of guarding the stern of the boat. I think that's the correct nautical term. There's even a brewing stand in here, which will come with 2 instant health potions, which is really good to have if you're running a little bit low on health out here. But the real treasure is down here in this room, where a shulker is guarding an item frame at the very prow of the boat. Once again, I hope I've got the terminology right there. Once we take down this shulker and it's stopped levitating us, we should be free to obtain the item here in the frame. There we go, we've got the Elytra, and it looks like we're being attacked by a shulker from a different angle. Where is that guy? Maybe he's outside one of these portholes and can snipe us from that position, or maybe that bullet just got lucky in its pathfinding, making its way down here. But either way, we now have Elytra, which take the place of the chest plate in your armor. So you're actually making yourself a little more vulnerable by wearing Elytra. But if we open up these chests, we should find some really valuable loot inside here as well. We've got a couple of diamonds, some gold bars, some iron bars, a lot of raw resources, but also some armor and some tools. In this case, the shovel is not really much to write home about, and the iron armor is something that we've progressed past at this point, but it's actually really nice to see stuff with mending enchanted on it already. Let's check the other chest over here. Looks like we got another set of boots and a mending and unbreaking iron shovel. So the gear there is not exceptional, but is still kind of cool that it's there. And if you don't have a great deal of armor and you've already been to the end, then chances are you might want to give that stuff a look. Ah, there's the other shulker. It's right on the corner over here, and it should be possible to take it down with a couple of arrows, but projectiles will bounce off of a shulker once it is closed up, so arrows aren't especially effective against shulkers when you're fighting them at range. We didn't get a shulker shell from that one, but we've already obtained 4 from the other shulkers we have fought so far, so once again, we can make a couple more of these shulker boxes and stash them in our ender chest. I'm going to break some planks down into wood. We'll make 2 chests, which should allow us to make 2 more shulker boxes. I'm going to throw down one of these. We're going to tuck our chest plate away in there, along with some of the diamond tools that I've already made. We'll leave the diamonds and the other valuable stuff in here as well, and maybe the other shulker box that we've already got can be used for these building blocks like Purpur and whatnot. Each of these can be collected up. You've got to make sure you pick them up and that they don't fall off the edge of a boat into the void, because that would be kind of disastrous to lose all of that equipment. But now we have 1 empty shulker box that we can take with us, and our ender chest has the same contents but a lot tidier. Before we leave the ship here, there are a couple of other things I would like to point out. There is a crow's nest of sorts up there, but that doesn't really have anything up there, so we don't need to worry too much about that. I find the mast is usually just a really good target for ender pearl throws if you want to get onto the deck of the ship nice and easily. Along the edges of the ship, we have the end rods, which are a light source, which can be crafted using popped chorus fruit and blaze rods. So those are a really nice modern looking light source you can use. You can sort of use them as strip lighting. There are a couple of these that generate naturally on the edges of boats and also around the edges of end city buildings. You'll notice a couple up there along with these purple and black banners. But one other really important treasure item that we can grab from these ships is up here right at the very front. We have a dragon's head attached to the front almost like a figurehead. And if we're careful and hold crouch as we step out here, we can place a block underneath the dragon's head, which means I can simply drop down onto that, break the dragon's head from the top, and we have obtained that. The first real mob head that we have got hold of in the game, actually. These are capable of a couple of fun little tricks. Let's say, for example, you put one on your head. It doesn't create the pumpkin head effect the way that putting a jack-o'-lantern on your head does, but having a dragon's head is pretty funny, and as you walk around, the mouth will actually open and close. It can do that if it is fed a redstone signal as well, so if you put this on a block of redstone, the dragon's head will constantly open and close when it is powered, which is pretty funny. But really, it's just a fun trophy, and honestly, a pretty good way of determining whether or not you have raided one of these end city ships before. If you leave the ship intact, but you have stolen the dragon's head from the very front, the figurehead is gone, that's the way you can tell that you've raided that ship before, and that there's not going to be an Elytra waiting for you inside. Speaking of Elytra, it's time for us to spread our wings and learn to fly. We have a set of elytra on our back, and they will open up a little bit if you crouch, but that's not actually how you use them. Instead, you use them by jumping or falling off of something and pressing space while you're in midair. Pressing the jump button a second time while you're in midair will open the wings out and allow you to glide. You can't flap the wings to gain any additional height, but those of you who are more experienced will know that you can actually craft firework rockets that allow you to boost yourself in the air and fly around. I haven't brought any of those with me to the end this first time because we are going to use the elytra fairly sparingly for our first exploration of the end. The reason for that is because elytra use a durability point for every second that you are in flight, and without mending and unbreaking on these, eventually the elytra will break. They won't disappear from your inventory like other items do when they lose their durability, but you will drop out of the air if you're currently flying, the wings will become tattered, and you'll be unable to use them to glide. So it's important that we use them relatively frugally as we explore the end for the first time. Alternatively, if you're well prepared, you can bring an unbreaking and mending book, an anvil, and some rockets, and use them to explore at a greater pace. But since we got lucky finding this end city ship so close, I figured we would do a bit more exploration on foot, because not everybody is going to find an end city ship right on their doorstep, and it's going to take a little more exploration of these islands in order to find a slightly larger end city that might have some other loot, more shulkers, and other things I want to demonstrate in this video. So we're going to glide on down to the surface here. Also, make sure that you don't tilt yourself directly down at the ground when you land. That's another very important lesson to learn with elytra, is that your speed is going to determine how fast you make impact with the ground or even walls. You can take kinetic energy damage from colliding directly with a wall, and that can sometimes prove fatal. So once again, make sure that you have feather falling with you, and make sure that you glide gracefully down. You can turn in order to kill your speed a little bit, and that will make sure that you don't hit the ground traveling too fast. Since the elytra are so valuable to us right now, and since I want to do a bit more exploration on foot, I'm actually going to swap my chest plate back in for the elytra, and we're going to put the elytra inside this shulker box along with the dragon's head and the end rods and a couple of other valuable things that we've gathered. We can leave that back in the ender chest, and that way, at least if we end up falling into the void and losing all of our items, we have the elytra, the one thing that we cannot replace whilst we're in the overworld. And we're going to branch out in search of more end cities. Now, as far as I'm aware, what I recall hearing about these cities is that they actually occur in a sort of loose grid throughout the void. So if we found one like we have here, it's often a good idea to explore in a direct line, either north, south, east, or west from the first end city that you find. Now, looking at our coordinates, going southeast from here takes us further back towards the 0, 0 coordinate, which is where the central end island is, and there's going to be a ring of void inside of these outer islands, separating them from the central end islands. So in that case, we don't want to be exploring south and east if we can help it. If we travel north and west, our coordinates will increase, and we'll be getting further away from 0, 0 and out into the thicker parts of these outer islands. Unfortunately, to the north of here, we have a pretty large gap of the void in between this island and the next island over. So I'm going to try heading west. If we head out in this direction, there might be a slightly closer landmass to bridge to. We use fewer resources in the process of bridging, and we might be able to find an end city along the same axis as this one. In fact, that seems to have paid off pretty immediately, because I am only a few steps away from this city, and already another one is loading into the render distance over there. And I only have a 16 chunk render distance running on this world, so it's not like I'd be able to see them from miles and miles away. This is another very, very small city, though, by the looks of things. It seems like it is just a single tower, although this tower widens out, which is something I was hoping would happen, because these central towers form the structure of a lot of the larger end cities. They have a bunch of shulkers inside the body of that tower, and at the top of that tower, we should also find additional loot chests. Unfortunately, it looks like one way or the other, we are going to have to bridge out over the void in order to reach that island, but that's totally fine. We should be able to craft a few more slabs, and if you run low on materials, as long as you have a decently durable pickaxe on you, you can always break down some of these end stone blocks into end stone bricks, and from there, those can be crafted into end stone brick slabs, and you can multiply your building material that way. So we're actually surrounded by a decent source of bridging material, although wood planks are going to take up a lot less space in your inventory, so it's probably a good idea to stick with the wood. It's also a lot more visible out here in the void, so it'll be easier to tell which way we traveled and which way to return. Now, once again, I'm going to crouch as though my life depends on it, because it really does, and we're going to bridge out over the void using the spruce slabs we just crafted. This is a point at which going into the accessibility or control settings and switching on toggle sneak might be a good idea, just to save your hands a little bit of extra work, but personally I find that I can't get used to those controls, and I would end up accidentally, just from muscle memory, holding down shift and constantly crouching and standing, which would not be a good idea whilst we're bridging over the void like this. Anyway, we've made it to the other side. We can now approach this second city, and there should be a couple of shulkers waiting for us at the entrance, but it looks like the way this city has generated, those have been replaced with end stone, and the shulkers might have been teleported somewhere inside the structure. There we go, there's a couple of them waiting for us at the top of the stairwell, and you'll notice that every so often when you deal some extra damage to them, they can teleport away. So they are kind of similar to Endermen that way. Now, if we break down this wall here, we should be able to attack the one that has positioned itself on the side of the building, and if we hover in this window frame for just a second, I should be able to collect that shulker shell. One other thing to know about shulkers is that they can actually reproduce if one of them hits another one with a shulker bullet, or alternatively, if one of them hits itself with its own shulker bullet. They can kind of reproduce without really breeding in the conventional sense. Now, we've reached the top of the staircase, and the shulkers have already hit me with levitation, but in my mind that's a good thing, because as long as I'm able to levitate my way up this tower, I can find a place to hide at the top, and we should be able to shoot down on the open shulkers from a distance, making sure that we don't have any more bullets chasing us up the tower. And if these shulker pellets flying at you gets a little bit too intense, it is also possible to attack them in order to destroy them. You don't need to worry too much about dodging all of them. If you hit them with an arrow or swing at them with a sword, chances are you can destroy them before they hit you. Now, I've hopped on down to grab the shulker shell that fell down here, and we should take a quick look around in case there are any more shulker shells that came to rest on any of these slabs. Having a water bucket is a really handy way to traverse these areas when you don't have levitation. But it looks like we just got the one shell from that, and we might end up getting another one by killing the shulker that's now attached to the outside of the tower somewhere. For now, we have two chests at the top of this tower, one of which has, some Depth Strider protection for diamond boots. Those are actually really good. Let's grab the diamonds and the gold that are in here as well. And we've got some more gold ingots, a couple of beetroot seeds. This was the only place you could get beetroot when it was first introduced, before they added it to villages. And a saddle, which is, technically speaking, loot, although it's not the kind of loot that I prefer. The valuable stuff, once again, we can tuck away in the shulker box, including some of the shulker shells that we have started to acquire, since shulker boxes themselves are going to be very valuable to our gameplay from now on. If you wanted to, you could always break down these chests so that you can use them to craft more shulker boxes as well. That's always an option. And we're going to try and find this last shulker that teleported away. There it is, on the edge of the tower. Hopefully we should be able to get a couple of shots in. There we go, and unfortunately it doesn't look like it ended up dropping any shulker shells. I'm going to ender pearl down here just to make sure and to collect up the XP, but nope, it looks like we didn't get any shulker shells from that one. Well, that's a little unfortunate, but hey, not to worry. We can break back down into the end city here, leave via the front entrance, and I'm going to continue to explore these end islands in the direction that we've already been traveling, because west seems to have been fairly fortunate for us so far. Every time we've gone this direction, we have found another end city, so I'm hoping that we'll find at least one more. Hopefully there'll be a larger one out here in the void, and we can loot that before we wrap up the episode. Okay, now you're talking. Now we're starting to get somewhere. At least a smaller tower. At least a slightly larger end city. We're just getting progressively larger end cities as we travel. Now, I've been doing a little bit of moving. We are at negative 2400 on the x-axis, and we're roughly on the same z-axis. I had to deviate a little bit because there were some very large gaps between these areas of the void. But if we bridge out across this last gap, we should be able to see what this other end city that is appearing in the distance has to offer. I will say that I've been fairly fortunate in how quickly these have appeared, because the first time you visit the end islands, you can sometimes take a little while to run into an end city. It's really just a matter of randomness in how they generate, and unfortunately it can take a couple of hours. It has taken me a couple of hours in previous attempts to find my first end city and start the search from there. But before we do that, before we go and attack this one, and it doesn't look like this has anything that our previous end city didn't have, maybe a couple more shulkers, but not much in the way of rooms that can contain loot. Over here in the distance, I spotted a purple beacon shining into the sky, and as you take a look through the chorus plants over in this direction, you might just be able to see that there is the silhouette of another bedrock end gateway over there. I don't have a spyglass on me right now, unfortunately, so I'll zoom in using the field of view slider. There you go, you can see it just behind that bunch of chorus plants in front of us. There's another bedrock return gateway. Since there really isn't a way to fast travel around the end, there aren't really any portals that we can use. Nether portals don't work here, so we can't use those to travel quickly between areas of the end. You will occasionally find these end return gateways dotted around some of the further islands like this, and the reason that those are there is to return you to the central end island once you are done raiding this area. They don't connect back to this area from the central end island though, so unfortunately the only way we have of accessing the end islands is to go back through those gateways on the inner ring of these outer islands. But that one there can be a great shortcut, so we don't have to go all the way back in the direction that we came. We can go and visit that one once we're done raiding the city. It will take us back to the obsidian platform that we used to enter the end, and we'll be able to return home. Let's fight a couple more of these shulkers at the entrance to this end city. We should be able to get a couple more shulker shells from this structure, since they're going to be a couple of shulkers further up. One of those teleported away, but I have absolutely no idea where it went. It doesn't seem to be attached to the inside of the structure, and maybe it just ended up hitting itself with one of the pellets? I don't know. Either way, looks like we got 2 shulker shells already. Let's make our way up into the center of this structure and see how many shulkers await us in the tower. Yep, this tower looked twice as tall as the last one, so I had a feeling there were going to be a few more. They are lining the walls around here, so we're going to have to be a little bit careful about how many times we get hit here, since the shulker pellets can deal a little bit of damage, but they can also be blocked with a shield, so if you're worried about how much damage you're taking, just angle your shield down. Get hit by one occasionally if you want to levitate, but it does seem like a lot of these shulkers are hitting each other and causing themselves to teleport away. We'll get that one last burst of levitation. We'll end up at the top of this tower here, and we'll take out any shulkers that have managed to teleport into this vicinity. There we go, one of them got hit by another pellet. Once we are back down to Earth, we should be able to come over here and take out this one. We got another shell from that as well, and it might be a case of firing down on the remaining shulkers further down here if we want to get the rest of these. Oh, some nice pickaxes and shovels in here, and some decent boots with depth strider. Okay, we got a fortune, like a fully enchanted iron pickaxe there. That's really not bad, even though it's made of iron. But remember that projectiles are going to bounce off of these shulkers whilst they are closed, so you really want them to be open and attempting to attack you so that you can deal any damage to them. And I'm going to hop down here, try and grab any shulker shells that I have missed so far, which is going to be easier said than done with all of them levitating me. But at least we can hide here underneath one of these overhangs and wait for all of the pellets outside to disperse before dropping down a little bit further, grabbing the shells from here, and there's a couple more further down that I want to get hold of as well. On each side of the end city, there seem to be arms that lead out to these individual rooms, which don't really contain a great deal, unfortunately. Every so often, it doesn't look like we're going to find one in today's episode, but you'll find a city that has these larger, multiple layered versions of these side rooms, which can also contain additional chest loot, much like the loot that we find at the top of the tower here, and even a spare ender chest, which you can grab if you've got a silk touch pickaxe and use to stash anything that you haven't already stashed in your inventory. Now, one dangerous aspect of these cities is that occasionally when the shulker bullets hit you multiple times, you are in danger of flying up pretty high, and so we want to make sure that we are close to somewhere like this where we can make an easy water bucket fall and catch. There we go, we can manage to avoid any fall damage that way. Alternatively, keep an ender pearl or 2 on you and switch to those when you need to make it down from greater heights. So, for example, if we ender pearl into this building, like so, we should be able to avoid taking any further fall damage. One other noteworthy thing about shulkers, actually, is that they need to be attached to a block, so if you end up breaking the block that they are attached to, they will often teleport away without taking any real damage. But there's a couple of them that have ended up perched pretty high up on this building, so I'm going to try my best to take out these guys. Looks like they've been hitting each other with the shulker pellets, hence why this one had a couple of potion particles, still had that levitation effect. We don't have to take out every shulker shulker in this entire place, but naturally that's going to maximize our opportunities to get shulker shells, and one of the most irritating things about coming out end city raiding like this is when you walk away with an uneven number of shulker shells. And we got 11 so far, so I would really like one more before we call it a day and make our way home here. Well, there's one more for us. We should be able to drop into this little opening, make our way down via a series of fall damage, and where did that shell drop? Yes, there it is, down here at the bottom of these ladders. Fantastic. Since there really aren't any other loot opportunities right here at this end city, I think we're probably going to call it a day there. We could always grab a couple more shulkers from these exterior buildings. There are a couple attached to the underside or the side of these towers, which makes them a little bit awkward to get to, so I think I might cut my losses there and make our way to the exit. We're going to reunite this shulker shell with the pile that we already have in our shulker box. We've got loads of loot here already. Our first elytra, a bunch of shulker shells, and some shulker boxes we have already crafted. I can be happy with that for now. But once we have unbreaking and mending on our elytra and we can use that to fly around, we could travel back here to get a bunch more of these cities taken care of, and in future episodes I'm sure we will come back and raid the end for even more loot. If you're a cautious kind of player, you might even want to risk traveling further into the end to find another city with an end ship, so that you have 2 elytra, and that way you have a backup just in case something happens to the first set. In my case, I'm not going to do that today, but we'll probably come back and do it in future, and I think we've been very fortunate with our end city finds. I hope you folks have as much luck as I have, but I have honestly done enough bridging over the void for one day. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking doing that stuff, but here we have our end return gateway, and as I mentioned, we can simply throw an ender pearl through this. I'll just make sure I can peel her up a little bit, make sure that I'm not going to throw this at a weird angle and have to fight another enderman for an ender pearl. We should be able to throw it in through there, and as I mentioned, we find ourselves back here on the obsidian platform where we enter the end dimension for the first time. And now we're back on the central island. All we need to do is hop through the bedrock gateway back home to the overworld. It doesn't play the end poem and the ending credits every single time you hop through this portal. Instead, it will just load us back here in the overworld, where it is daytime, and we can unpack all the stuff we got from those end cities. And oh my goodness, look at the loot that we got in this chest. And this isn't even the richest end city haul that I've had, and some of these, honestly, were enchanted items that I had before, so I maybe shouldn't be looking at these with too much satisfaction. But everything from this second row onwards is loot that we discovered in the end cities, including 2 very good, honestly, in my opinion, very good sets of boots. So really worth keeping those handy just in case we need a backup set of Depth Strider and Protection boots. These ones have Unbreaking on as well. And we got a decent Unbreaking 3 Efficiency 4 diamond pickaxe that was pulled straight out of an end city loot chest. So that's very nice. Along with a few extra diamonds, we didn't end up finding any of the armor trims in any of the end cities. And armor trim does generate there. There is a special Spire armor trim that you can get in end cities. So it's a real shame we didn't acquire that today, but we can go back and look for that in future. We got ourselves a dragon head, we got ourselves the end rods, a bunch of shulker shells that we can use to craft more shulker boxes, and of course, our pride and joy, the elytra. Now, I'm not going to do too much flying around today, and honestly, I'm really happy that we waited this long to get hold of the elytra, because if you're flying around in a Minecraft world, it really changes your perspective on things. We're going to be looking at our builds from the top down a lot more now. We're going to be seeing the roofs of builds, and we're going to be seeing how small our settlement here really feels, even though the storage room we've built feels quite gigantic from ground level. We've also brought home a bunch of other things, including our first chorus flowers, which if we want to grow them now, we can plant them on end stone here in the overworld, and they will grow quite naturally as they do in the end islands. We brought home some chorus fruit, which we can smelt and turn into more of these purpur blocks, and we're going to add the purpur blocks to my item filters over here in the storage building. There we go, the purpur blocks can go in there. We'll swap that out for a filter material, and I think that's where we're going to wrap up this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. It's been an adventurous one. We have traveled through the void, we have braved the dangers of the end, and we have made it back with some of the most important loot in the game. Some stuff that is really going to change the way that we play, and I'm excited to explore that in future episodes. But that's where we're going to leave this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed this end city raiding episode. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care. Bye for now.